I used to think the house was quiet at night. Not peaceful quiet, more like the way a hospital is quiet. Everything still. Everything listening. That night, it was just me. My roommate, Jess, was away on a work trip, and the winter storm outside made the air feel thick, pressing against the windows. I was in the living room, scrolling through my phone, the only sound coming from the low hum of the heating system. Then I heard it dot. It wasn't loud. In fact, at first I thought I imagined it. A soft, almost conversational whisper drifting from the vent across the room. Dot. It said my name. Dot double quotes. Dot dot dot. I froze, my thumb hovering over the phone screen. My first thought was the neighbor. Maybe their vent connected to ours somehow. And I was just hearing muffled talking, but the tone, it wasn't casual. It was deliberate. The kind of tone someone uses when they want your attention. I leaned a little closer, thinking maybe I was being ridiculous. Jess, I called out, even though I knew she was hours away. No response. Just the hiss of warm air. A few minutes. Later, it came again. Sam. It's cold down here. The words crawled into me in a way I can't explain. Down here. At first, I tried to laugh it off. Houses make noises. Pipes creak, vents hum, wind finds the smallest gaps. But the thing is, I didn't imagine the words. I couldn't have and they knew my name. That night, I turned the TV on for background noise, kept every light on, and went to bed way later than I should have. But even as I lay there, half asleep, I heard it again through the bedroom vent, closer this time. Remember when you were 6 and you hid in the closet so your mom wouldn't make you take medicine? My whole body went cold. That wasn't something anyone could know. Jess definitely didn't know. My mom had never told anyone. It was one of those tiny, forgettable memories that lives in your own head forever, until something in the dark takes it out and dangles it in front of you. The next morning, I checked the basement. The furnace was running normally. The ducts looked fine. Nothing out of place. I told myself I was tired, stressed, maybe even having some kind of auditory hallucination from the white noise of the heat. But by the third night, it was worse. The voice was louder, and it started asking me things, not in a curious way. In a way that made me feel like if I didn't answer, something bad would happen. Why don't you come down here, Sam? It's warmer if you crawl inside. You won't have to be alone anymore. Sometimes it laughed, not loud, not manic. Just a slow, knowing chuckle. I started recording with my phone, leaving it by the vent while I sat on the couch, pretending to ignore it. When I played the audio back, I almost wished it had been blanked out. It wasn't. You can hear the whisper. You can hear my name. But there's something else, like scraping. Faint, irregular, as if something was shifting. Around deep inside the ducts. After that, I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. I started keeping the vents closed, even though it made the house freezing. I thought that if I shut them all, maybe it couldn't get to me. I was wrong, because the voice didn't stop. It just moved. I'd be in the kitchen, and I'd hear it from the floor vent under the table. I'd be in the shower, and I'd hear it from the tiny vent by the ceiling. Always whispering, always knowing. I called Jess, tried to explain, but she thought it was stress. She offered to come home early, but I told her not to, partly because I didn't want her thinking I'd lost it, and partly because something told me the voice didn't want her here. It wanted me. By the 5th night, I made a decision. I was going to follow the sound. I waited until I heard it again, faint, steady, coaxing me toward the basement. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt, but I kept going. The furnace rumbled softly. The ductwork snaked overhead, vanishing into the walls. I knelt down by the largest vent opening, the one that connected directly to the main system. The whisper was right there, You're so close now. And then, I swear to God, something tapped on the inside of the metal. Not like settling pipes. Not like debris falling. Like knuckles. I ran. I didn't even remember climbing the stairs, just slamming the basement door shut and shoving the lock into place. I barely slept that night. When I finally checked the recording the next morning, the audio was distorted, like the phone mic had picked up interference. But underneath the static, there's a moment where you can hear two things at once. My name, and the sound of something crawling. That was last week. Jess came home yesterday, and I haven't told her everything. She doesn't need to know the worst part, because last night, while we were both in the living room, she froze and looked toward the vent, and then she asked me, "Why did you just whisper my name?" Jess's question hung in the air, heavier than anything the voice had ever said to me. Why did you just whisper my name? I could see her scanning my face, waiting for me to laugh or admit I was messing with her. But my expression must have given me away. I wasn't playing. I said quietly. Her brow furrowed, but she didn't push it. She just sat back down, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. I could tell she was unsettled, though. She kept glancing toward the vent, her eyes following the faint sway of the curtain above it, as if she was trying to see if air alone was moving it. That night, I didn't sleep again. Not because of the voice, it didn't speak to me at all. But because of the silence. It was worse somehow. Every creak of the house, every faint rush of wind outside had me straining to hear more. I kept waiting for the whisper to return. My chest was tight with anticipation, like something was hiding in the dark, just beyond my sight. When I finally dozed off around dawn, I dreamt of narrow spaces, crawling through metal ducts, the walls cold against my skin, the air tasting like dust and rust. In the dream, there was light up ahead, but every time I reached for it, a hand from behind grabbed my ankle and pulled me back into the dark. I woke up gasping, heart pounding, sheets damp with sweat. The next few days were uneventful, almost too uneventful. Jess didn't hear anything again. I didn't either, though I kept the vents closed whenever I could. But on the fourth night of this quiet stretch, I woke up to find my bedroom vent wide open. I know I didn't open it. Jess swore she didn't either. The strange thing, there was no draft, no rush of warm air, just the faintest scent, metallic and damp, like wet coins. I started digging into the house's history. Ours was built in the late 70s, but the lot itself had been empty for decades before that. According to property records, the land was owned by a single family for nearly a century, the Creightons. They had a big farmhouse here once, torn down in the 50s after a fire. But here's where it gets strange. I found a newspaper clipping from 1954 about a teenage boy from the Creighton family who went missing. His name was Aaron. They searched the property for weeks, but never found him. The article mentioned something odd. The family believed he'd been taken into the walls. It sounded like a figure of speech. At least, I hoped it was. I didn't tell Jess about this right away. I didn't want to put ideas in her head, but I did buy a small endoscope camera, one of those snake-like cameras you can feed into tight spaces. And one night, while Jess was out with friends, I decided to take a look inside the vent. I pushed the camera in slowly, the small LED lighting the inside of the duct. For the first few feet, it was normal, dusty metal, a few cobwebs. Then the space seemed to widen. It was hard to tell, but it looked like the duct had been altered at some point, opening into a crawl space that shouldn't exist. I could see debris, scraps of old fabric, maybe paper, scattered on the floor of this hidden area. And then something moved, just a shadow at the very edge of the light, but it was moving toward the camera. I yanked it out so fast the wire tangled. My breathing was loud in the empty room. I didn't sleep that night either. The voice came back the next evening. Only this time. It didn't use my name, Dot. It said, "Why did you bring her back?" The tone was different. Not coaxing, not playful, Dot. It sounded annoyed. I didn't respond, but I noticed something chilling. The air from the vent was colder than it should have been, considering the furnace was running. The days that followed blurred together. I stopped eating much. Jess started complaining that I looked pale, but I needed to get out of the house more. But I couldn't, because I started to think to know that the voice only spoke when I was alone, that it didn't want an audience. That's when I made my biggest mistake. I tried to talk to it, Dot, one night. I sat cross-legged in front of the living room vent, my phone recording beside me. The air was still. The metal grill was cold to the touch. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. There was a pause. Then softly, "Company." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The answer came slower, as if it was smiling while speaking. "Aaron." That was the first time it gave me a name, and I swear, the moment it said it, the air in the room felt heavier, like someone was standing right behind me. I stopped the recording and listened to it back. Immediately, the whisper was there, clear as day, Dot, and behind it, under the hiss of air, that faint scraping again. 2 nights later, Jess left to stay with her sister after an argument. She said she couldn't deal with my obsession and the way I was, jumping at shadows. That was 3 days ago, Dot. Since then, Aaron's been talking to me more often. He tells me things, little details about my life, memories I've never said out loud. He hums songs my mother used to sing. Sometimes he tells me about the farmhouse, about the fire, and sometimes he tells me to come closer. I don't think I'm going to fight it much longer. Last night, I dreamed I was back in that narrow metal, that this time I wasn't trying to get out. This time I was following the voice, Dot. It's been calling to me all day, Dot, and tonight I think I might answer.